Hey everyone, have you kissed your mom recently? If you haven't, what are you doing? It's Mother's Day. It's the time to hug, to send love, to text. Don't just text. If it's Don't just text a Mother's Day message. Call them. Call them up. They pushed you out or they got a hole cut in their stomach, something to bring you into this world and all you're going to do is send a text. Come on. This is TV, guys.
It is. And even if your mom adopted you and didn't do all that, still call her.
Exactly. I mean, there might be even more work put into that. If your
Yeah.
mom's a single mom, holy crap. If you have a single dad, then there are some females that probably, hopefully, were able to be a maternal figure to you there in your life. And so maybe even send them a message or a call.
Yep. So episode can go out to our moms, Judy and Matt's mom.
And Linda.
I don't know if I've ever actually met your mom. I don't think I have.
Speaking of which, we had some news break yesterday talking about moms. I don't know if you saw it, but they announced that there's going to be a How I Met Your Mother
I did see
sequel
that.
starring Hilary Duff. That'll be interesting.
It will be interesting, and especially since did you know? I forget if we've talked about this. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. They were trying to do a Lizzie McGuire reboot. Most of the cast was on board to come back, but then there was disagreements between Disney and Hilary Duff and the cast because they wanted it to not just be like Disney Channel level. They wanted to be like, let's have a realistic version of what Lizzie would be like in her 30s. And they're like, no, it's Disney. Everything's got to be G-rated. And then they couldn't agree, and it got canceled. So I'm glad that Hilary Duff's going to be doing something again because I like her a lot.
Yeah, I had heard that, and it makes sense that this could maybe be a spiritual successor in a way of her being able to have a sitcom again,
Hmm.
but with more adult themes.
Yeah.
Even though How I Met Your Mother, for being an adult themed show, it also was quite so. I hope they keep that innate silliness, and I
Yeah.
hope that they realize don't screw up the ending of this one. Don't do it, guys.
Yeah. All right. So we're talking about moms. And before we go into the favorite moms, I'm realizing a lot of shows don't do well with moms. So, like, there is the category of the dead mom, which means the mom's just not even in the show at all. Like in Full House and Supernatural and The Conners, even though Roseanne was Roseanne. And then you also have shows with moms that are either just absent and never mentioned, or halfway through the show, the mom just disappears. There's like That's So Raven and The Sweet Life and iCarly and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, King of Queens, Chuck, and all the Power Rangers.
Or maybe there's a show where the mom starts off as a pretty good character and that you like her, but they realize she's a little flat, so they decide to make her character go through menopause, and then she becomes a bitter old drunk. And then you have Kitty Foreman doing that. So
Yeah.
I was like, she's a good mom for half of it, and then she's just like, I'm just gonna get drunk all the time.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, married to Red Foreman, I
Yeah.
can see that being a case or a cause of that.
With Eric and Lori as your kids.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, and then there's shows like Fresh Prince and Family Matters who are both like, you know what, we can just change the actress and the mom and no one will notice.
Bewitched was doing that, just changing the main actor, and no one noticed. They did that long before any other show.
Yeah. So, despite all of those shows, there are still plenty of shows that have great moms to both either look up to or be entertained by.
I've got two great moms, and I'm like, these are super realistic moms that
Hmm.
I feel like, I can't put them on my top three, especially because we've talked about those shows before. And I don't like to just like hit the same shows every single week. But also, like, there's not these huge high moments. So it's like I want to bring them up. So I'm gonna mention them in honorable mentions if you don't talk about them, just ever so briefly. But I've got
Sounds
my
good.
top three.
I got a list. I'm going to decide which ones I'm going to talk about because I'm sure some I'll talk about in briefly as well.
Well, I'm worried we've got one in common.
If we do,
So
I've got backups. It's all good.
look at that. Well, why don't you hit us with what's your number three? Number three, top TV mom. Hit us.
Number three is a mom that I don't actually like most of the time. This is a not very likable mom, but she has a lot of really good moments. The acting is really good, and there's two specific scenes that show the connection she has with her husband and her kids. I'm talking about Lois from Malcolm in the Middle.
Okay.
Because I mean, she is also her character is like the hard ass, like the I'm in charge and like, really good and crazy and extreme a lot of times. But there are two different scenes where the family really comes together to stand for her. One is, do you remember the clown fight?
No, but I just love I love that title.
So I forget the setup, but so the both Hal is her husband and all her kids. I think they forgot either her birthday or Mother's Day or something. So she just went and left them as like, I'm just going to go to the carnival and hit the batting cages. I'm going to do my thing because you all forgot me. And they all show up and they're trying to do the whole, we appreciate you, we love you. They have that speech, and then one of the clowns calls her Wide Ride, and then Hal's like, "Excuse me, what did you say?" And then Hal and the clown start fighting, like fist fighting. And then other clowns start seeing this, and they start joining in. And then Francis and Malcolm, and like, so all of a sudden it's like turns into this brawl with with all the boys and all the clowns just beating each other up. And then it switches, and you see Lois looking at everybody lovingly, and like a romantic montage music plays, and all of a sudden now it's like slow mo romantic music playing over the clown beating
Of
because she
course.
realizes this meant more to her than the speech because they were standing up to her against all these clowns. And like in their own weird way, that was how they made up with her. And then similarly, in another later on, we find out that Hal's family was super rich, and they all hated Lois, and they think that she's trash or whatever, and they trick her into missing the big family picture. And so to get back at them, the sons, they steal the big golf cart, the brand new golf cart, which was the big gift that everyone went in on for Hal's dad. They drove it over the buffet table into the swimming pool as like a big screw you, you mess with my mom, this is what you get.
I've seen that GIF. The one of all of them just sitting in the golf cart, just like nice and calm as it slowly sinks. And I'm like, I don't remember this episode. I wonder what the story is behind it. So here it
Yeah.
is.
And Hal and Lois on the way home, everyone's sweat in the car, and they're trying to discipline their kids while still being proud of them. And Hal's like laughing, like, "If you kids ever drive a golf cart over a buffet table and into a swimming pool, there will be dire consequences." And even though Lois wasn't the one doing those things in either of those scenes, those are both scenes of everyone coming together to defend Lois, which really kind of is a defense for her character when a lot of times all she's doing is screaming and fighting at everybody. So I think that kind of shows that she has some interesting character development.
Yeah, that's a hard show for me. If I'm in your position of putting that on the list, just because it's like the family is supposed to be a sort of dysfunctional family, but at the same time, I mean, that's modern America. How many families are completely functional? Not no family is like the Brady Bunch, and so to be able to have an honest show of saying this is a really screwed up family, but in a way they're completely normal because of
Mhm.
how screwed up they are.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me. That I wouldn't put her on my list, but I don't argue with your pick. For my number three, I actually up until like 3 minutes ago, my number three was going to be. I'm sorry if this takes yours. If it takes one of yours, tell me, and then I'll stop talking about her because I'm going
Okay.
to talk about my real pick. My number three was going to be Marge Simpson. Is that on your list?
It's not, because go ahead.
Okay, good. Because I Marge has a lot of really, really good moments, and there's a lot of times that she has to say, like, she saves her kids from each other, she saves their kids from the world, she saves her kids from her husband. There's a lot of times that it's so clear and so obvious how much her heart is for her kids, and there's a lot of really good
Yeah.
moments in that. The problem that I have with Marge that kicks her off the list that I was struggling with up until now, and I was like, I got someone else to put in there, is Homer early on in the series. Like he straight out abuses Bart. I mean,
Yeah.
he's an abusive father. So I can't give Mother on a top three list to someone who's in a household that allows that to continue happening. So I mean, I know it's a cartoon. I know it's removed from reality. So that's why I put her on there at first.
Yeah.
But
Simpsons has that weird line because it was kind of one of those first like sitcom cartoons. And so you think about like cartoon violence. I mean, no one is mad about Elmer Fudd, shooting Daffy Duck in the shotgun right to the face because that's cartoon violence. And so Simpsons had a little bit of that with the strangling of Bart, but at the same time, they're also making like family storylines together. So it's kind of hard when those things don't always clash together. It's a little awkward at times.
Yeah, and there's some really good Homer moments with him as a dad, especially early on. That they were less absurd early on, if that's possible. And so there's a couple more grounded moments of like showing how much he cared about his kids and how much like he's just doing his best.
Yeah,
Um,
wasn't there an episode where he found out there's no pictures in the house of Maggie because they're all up in Homer's office because that's his motivation to not quit his job?
yeah, I remember the end of it, like the covering of like their slogan until with pictures until it says "Do it for her," and like all these pictures of Maggie, and that's a really sweet moment.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
he doesn't do it for Bart or Lisa, just Maggie.
just Maggie,
Yeah,
yeah. Bart and Lisa, they suck.
yeah.
So my other number three that I want to replace is actually, we talked about it earlier that there's some parents that, they're adoptive parents and they care about that. They are parents. Like they care about their kids just as much as the biological parents and sometimes even more so. And
Mhm.
so mine is Martha Kent from Smallville.
Okay.
And so she's not technically Clark's mom in a biological sense, but she and her and Jonathan really are the guiding light for Clark. They are what helps him have his moral center. They are what he remembers as he's trying to be a hero and remembering the words of his mom and dad. And so, Martha, throughout this series, you see how much she fights for her son and for her husband. And her and Jonathan are that classic type of these farmers that are just barely getting by. Economically, they're never going to be the richest people that there are, but if someone comes along is like Lex Luthor's like, hey, I've got a bunch of money, I can give it to you, they're proud. Like, we work for our money and we're not going to take a handout because we might not be well off, but we've got is our own. And so they teach that responsibility into Clark. And I, like, as a parent, I cannot imagine having a kid that would have superpowers.
Mhm.
Like, it's hard enough to discipline them sometimes, but you give them superpowers and like, get back here, you faster than the speeding bullet kid. Like, you can't run away from me, even though like,
Exactly.
and there's some episodes even when Clark he goes in this downward spiral of depression, and like he even gets a ring of kryptonite that it's not the green kryptonite, it's a kryptonite that it pretty much inebriates him, so to speak, of just taking away his good judgment. And he runs away for in between seasons, and his parents have to go after and get him. And it's like they keep loving it. How do you still be a mortal parent when your son is unstoppably powerful and he's in this sort of realm of destruction? And so there's a really good storyline with Jonathan in that, but Martha is right there with it. She's there, and when, spoiler alert for middle of the season, when Jonathan dies, she's there to help pick up the pieces still and help keep him moving and reminding him of the lessons from that Jonathan had tried to instill in him. So
Yeah, I've never seen I almost said Star Wars. I have seen Star Wars. Just I've never seen Smallville, but that's an interesting dynamic. Like Superman's parents, like who raised, like it's just interesting because it's kind of like I know Spider-Man has the great power comes great responsibility, but like how do you make Superman not just physically strong but into like a good person?
yeah, and it shows how great these characters are that they're able to create a son like that, because they even do some of these. What would happen if Clark was found by Lionel Luthor, for example?
Yeah.
So they even have some episodes where it's like anyone else, and this guy would become a megalomaniac. Like this sort of power would corrupt him, but because he had them in his life, he
Hmm.
is able to make the power work for him and be a savior for other people. So
Yeah. Sounds good. My number two is one that might be on your list. This is a character we've talked about before. This is not one that I would want to be my mom, but she is so entertaining. I'm talking about Doris Roberts as Marie on Everybody Loves Raymond.
she, yeah, she's funny.
Just so many great moments because she comes from trying to be a good supportive mother, but she just misses it so much. Like just completely oblivious to how she completely favors Ray to the point where like she says, "I don't have any favorites," and then everybody looks to like, really. And then even when she does try to help Robert, and he has this big FBI interview, and she decides to help him by ironing his suit, gets distracted by seeing Ray on TV, ruins the suit, and then emails a letter to his interviewer saying, "Please don't be mad at my son because I ruined his lucky suit." And it's just like so awkward and inappropriate. Like he's the head of the FBI, and you're sending a letter like that. It's just that's the kind of meddling she does, and she
Mhm.
can't stop herself. And it just would be unbearable if that was your life. But it's so funny to watch.
Yeah. Marie, her big saving grace is she definitely cares and she
Yeah.
loves her family. Absolutely. And that's something you need to have. She's to me too manipulative to be a good mom. Actually, if I was going to choose from that show, I'd choose Deborah. Deborah's a really good mom. She has to, I mean,
Mhm.
she has to put up with Ray. You see
Yeah.
how dumb Ray is. Ray sees how dumb he is. He knows he's not like the best catch that there is, and he knows he misses it a lot, but
Yeah.
he tries really hard to help out and to be the husband that Deborah needs him to be.
Yeah.
But she does so much. I mean, even in the beginning of the episodes where he's giving like the narration of his family, like when he talks about Deborah, he's like, "Oh, she's great. I don't know how she does it."
Hmm.
Like she's that type of mom. I don't
Yeah.
know how she does it. She balances all this stuff, and even is okay not being a working mom. She's even okay to be a stay-at-home mom, which at this point in kind of our culture, that started disappearing in the 90s. And I'm going to kind of talk about that with my number two pick.
Hmm.
But we saw like this increase in the 80s of the working mom, and those gender roles started to kind of go away that
Yeah.
had been there from the 50s and 60s. It was no longer completely ridiculous for a woman to be in the marketplace.
Yeah.
So props any boomer is a negative term. I was about to say any boomer, any baby boomer though, who's out there that's a working mother or was a working mother. You
Yeah.
had set a standard for women for years to come, for generations to come. Well done. Thank you for your
Yeah.
your work.
Because Marie wouldn't even be a boomer because Ray and Robert are boomers. So she's
Yeah,
I think it's a builder is what they call that generation.
yeah. So did you have more about her?
I mean, I could, but I mean, I think we got the gist of Marie.
Because my number two is a great working mother, but also one that she had such a great demeanor around the house. And this is a show that we don't talk about too
Ooh, I
much.
think I'm guessing. Are you talking about Claire?
I am talking about
Yes.
Claire Huxtable from the Cosby Show.
Oh, I
And
was thinking. I thought you were talking about Claire Dunphy
Claire Dunphy,
from
what is
Modern
she from?
Family.
Modern Family. I actually haven't ever seen Modern Family.
No, it's pretty good.
I've heard good things.
Claire Huxtable is a great pick. So go ahead.
Yeah, because the Cosby Show, it kind of has a bad taste in your mouth now after everything that's come out about Bill Cosby.
Yeah.
So I try, like, it's really hard. I try and separate that because the Cosby we saw in the Cosby Show is a great dad, and I mean that's why it was so painful when all this stuff came out, because he
Yeah.
had this great persona that was really tied into not only his actor but
Hmm.
him as a person. And so, it always seemed like he was this great family man. And so, the Bill on the show, his character, he's a doctor and he does a great job providing for his family, but he's a bit silly. And like, he has a great command of the household, but he also, like, one of the things that he does is he's pretty much a liar. He, like, his kids ask him something, he will just tell them this story that's a complete lie. He gives them like all this BS all the time. He teases Theo, he gives him
Yeah.
a hard time, and he ribs him quite often. And Claire, she has like this sly sort of humor, but
Mhm.
she's also a bit no nonsense. And like
Yeah.
Bill can tease him and everything, but Claire, she's a straight shooter. She
Mhm.
doesn't hold back. She is a force to be reckoned with. She is a great compliment to Bill in their marriage, and definitely a great mom in how she treats the kids. And you can tell
Yeah.
she has to respect the household, but it's not a fear. there's some moms or parents that have a respect, but it kind of is too much like they're at a distance. You can tell she loves her kids,
Mhm.
but that she also keeps a strong household.
Yeah, I think a great little moment with Claire, actually, what I think is one of the funniest episodes of the Cosby Show is the barbecue. I don't know if that's what the episode's called, but so Denise, who's the second oldest daughter, which was getting married, and Theo was planning her husband's bachelor party, and they were talking about, oh, Theo's going to be hiring strippers, and everyone's like, oh, Martin is his name. It's like, oh, I never asked him to just be strippers. And I was like, well, you didn't also say no, and like everyone's going on and on about like strippers and this and that, and like one of the other brother-in-law was like, well, if that's what they want, and I was like, everyone's just mad about that. And then when Claire finds out, she's like, well, she says this line, well, did you tell him that pasties and tassels do not make it in this family? And everyone's like, what are you talking about? I'm in the back. I'm not part of this. And it's just, she has like with one line just shuts it down and be like, nope, that's not how our family does this.
Yeah. She's such an awesome character too. I mean, she's like you didn't see too many of these characters that were both black and female that really were inspirational back in this time period. And
Yeah.
so, there was even and the way even her feminism was. I remember there's this episode where Sandra was dating some guy, and he was at the house and kind of giving Claire a hard time because she brought Bill a cup of coffee,
Oh yeah.
and she's like, you think that I serve him, like that this is a restaurant? That like that's not what I'm doing. He brought me a cup of coffee earlier today. You have to understand that a relationship, there's give and take, there's 50-50. And if you don't get that into your skull, you're going to wonder why you never have someone who's serving you like
Yeah.
this.
I
Or
remember
maybe
that.
she's had to bring it. Yeah.
And that was Elvin. That was the guy who ended up becoming her son-in-law, and he did kind of become less chauvinistic over time.
Yeah, and it's great for her to show that like it is feminism, and like how
Yeah.
true feminism should be is like, I'm not lesser than him because I'm doing this, but because I know how
Hmm.
strong a relationship is and I know how he views me, I can do this and I can serve him in this spot because
Hmm.
he also serves me. That's what a relationship is. You serve each other, and it's not at a spot of being lesser than the other person.
Yeah. I will say I did get rid of all my Cosby Show DVDs. I gave them to Goodwill because I needed space, and also like I don't really want to look at Bill Cosby staring at me from the shelf every day.
Especially, there's like this image I'm thinking of that's really popular, like where it's like him from the side, but he's looking over at you like with this grin and like kind of
Yeah.
doing like this, his hands rubbing together. Is like, now knowing what we know, I feel like you're plotting something against me, Bill.
Yeah. So I know we're not talking about his character, but I have to say my favorite Bill Cosby moment from the Cosby Show. So he's napping on the couch, and his oldest Sandra and Elvin are just in the process of moving out of the house and getting their own place. And his grandson runs up and puts a sticker on his face and wakes him up. He's like, "Why'd you put a sticker on my face?" And the little boy was like, "Yeah, Mom and Dad said to put a sticker on all the big heavy things we want to take with us when we move." He has this delivery like, "Well, thank you for considering me a big heavy thing."
Man, he was funny. It sucks, but
Mhm.
that was a good show.
Yeah. So I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna just briefly mention an honorable mention. Your number one isn't from Lost, is it?
It's not. Nope.
Okay. So from Lost, I'm not talking about Claire or Kate or Son, because all three of them at different times have abandoned their kids.
Yeah.
But you know who didn't abandon her daughter even for 16 years was
Claire's
Danielle
mom?
Rousseau. Yep.
Ooh,
No, Danielle Rousseau.
Daniel's yourself. Yep.
Because her daughter got kidnapped like right after she was born, and then we see her, she's living on this island alone, and the first time we see her, she has kidnapped Saeed because because she thinks that he's one of the others, and the only thing she's concerned about, she keeps saying, "Where's Alex? Where is Alex?" Like she hasn't given up on seeing her daughter for 16 years, and like that's the only thing that really drives her. And she eventually does get that reunion with Alex, even though they both get shot and killed not too long after.
Yeah. That yeah. But way to be a buzzkill about that. There's actually one thing that I really appreciate about Rousseau's character, because she, unfortunately, she was crazy, so it's hard for her. Like, the only thing that kept her even a little sane is her love for Alex. But there's a moment that we find out later, because when Claire comes back after in the first season after getting taken by the others, and she comes back and she doesn't remember anything that's going on. She has like this scratch on her arm. And then we find out in a flashback, and I think it's season 2, we find out that she was kind of drugged and indoctrinated and brainwashed to think that the spot that she was at with Ethan was a good spot. And that, Ethan only cared about her, and that all this good stuff was going to happen for Aaron, for her baby. And so when Alex gets her broken out of the Dharma spot, the Dharma bunker, and she's in the jungle, she's trying to get back to Ethan, and she bumps into Rousseau, and she starts calling out for Ethan, and Rousseau's like trying to save her, and ends up like scratching her arm in trying to save her. And it was like a really nice moment to me, because like when she realizes that Rousseau is trying to save her, it's also like Rousseau was all about her and staying away from any sort of trouble for so long, because she knew how dangerous the others were. But she was willing to insert herself into the situation because she knew how important it was for the mom to be there for their kid. And she was able to kind of identify, relate. Rousseau was able to relate to Claire as a mom, and being like, I'm going to risk myself to help save you because your kid needs you to be there for him.
Yeah, definitely. Like you definitely see her humanity, and that kind of plays, even though like she didn't have a direct connection with Claire or Alex. It was like I said, it was that connection, and she knew that the others were bad, so someone else being kidnapped by them is going to be bad, and she's going to help them.
Yep. All right, hit me with was that just a one you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, that was just a one in passing. My number one, you actually mentioned earlier as a bad mom, but I have to mention Kitty Foreman. Because there's so many great moments with her. I agree. Towards the end, they kind of just leaned into her being more harsh. But it's funny because this was a show that neither of the parents really had to be really developed characters at all. Because the show was about the kids. They could have easily just had the parents just be off in the distance, like any of the other kids' parents. Like none of the rest of them have except for Bob, have like really developed roles. But Red and Kitty are so funny, and there's some episodes where they're the funniest part of the show. Yeah, and because she has that like naiveness where like Red is just, he doesn't care about the nonsense. He doesn't care about being liked. He's just like, oh, these stupid kids in our house. They're always, whereas Kitty is always about welcoming them. And she's, I think, the one who invited Hyde to live with them, and just always thinking the best, even though they're all like sleeping with each other and smoking pot in the basement right under their nose for years without them ever knowing it. It was just funny to see her cheesiness along with Red's crankiness.
Yeah. One thing apart from like her drunkenness that comes out in the show, the other thing that would keep her off my list is you look at you kind of judge a parent based on their kids.
Yeah.
And Eric ends up kind of sucking, and you said it earlier. What's Eric's name?
Lori.
Yeah. She kind of ends up sucking too. So it's like they don't have very good kids, and so she gets points off for that.
Well, I went for a combination of good moms, also with entertaining moms.
Yeah.
But the funniest one, do you remember the scene where Red and Kitty are like imagining what would happen if all the kids were left alone? And so you see the scene where it's all the main six, but it's Kitty's voiceover with her imagining of what's going on, and everyone's just being over the top, like it's like an after school special. At the point where one of the girls runs in and says, "Who wants to give Eric a venereal disease?" Like that in her mind is what's happening when the children are left alone, and it's just such a funny scene.
Yeah. I'm surprised that you didn't have Shirley from Community on your list.
She's on my alternates. I was going to bring her up a little bit later, just in passing, but I didn't bring her up because her being a mom is mentioned, but we don't actually get to see her interacting with her kids a whole lot.
Yeah. yeah, we see a little bit, and like, when she's with her kids, you again can tell that she's a good mom. She's also got that stern, like, there's a certain like level of black mom where it's like you do not mess with this mom of
Yeah.
like, your mom might have a look that she gives you, but I've heard from a lot of
Mhm.
my black friends, like they either have a mom or a grandma that have this look that like you wet yourself a little bit when they look at you with
Yeah.
that look. And Shirley has got that look as a mom, and you can see that when she's
Well,
with her kids.
well, at one point so in one episode, I think it's Abed or someone makes a joke that they call Shirley Two Voice. She's like, "Ooh, that's so sweet. Don't mess with me, boy." Like,
She does. She has both of those sides. She's a good character. She's a lot of fun and she's entertaining. But like her arc in getting like to be a businesswoman and doing this for her and for her family is a pretty inspiring one. And so I was just surprised that didn't make your list. Two of my honorable mentions before I hit my number one. We talked about this show last week, so I didn't want to bring up Home Improvement again.
that's all
But
right.
I think Jill's a good character. I think
Oh yeah.
again with that working mom that was just starting to come into the forefront in the 90s and seeing more and more that be a common thing. She did a really great job of representing an actual working mom who dealt with the pitfalls of having that very traditional type of man, who is like always tinkering and whose
Mhm.
interests don't always line up with her interests, and they're
Yeah.
trying to figure out how do we spend time together, how do we parent together. Like there was a lot of really endearing moments that they had
Mhm.
with the boys because um, the kids were really a big part of the show.
Yeah.
It was Tim and Jill a lot. These kids were a big part of the show. And so we got
Yeah.
to see how they raised them and how they interacted with them. And they did a great job of tag teaming in the
Mhm.
discipline side and in tag teaming in the support side and loving. So she was a very realistic portrayal of a 90s working mom woman. So I
Yeah.
appreciated that about her.
One thing I like about Jill is a lot of these shows they have what I call like the buffoon dad, or the dad's basically just another kid, and he doesn't know anything, and the mom's the one who just is always in charge. And to an extent, that's kind of the case sometimes. Tim is a goofball and he messes things up, and Jill has to be the voice of reason a lot. But it's never to the point where you think that Tim is like one of her kids. They have enough moments where like they come together and they show their mature side. So Jill's
Yeah.
able to be that voice of reason without being like overbearing like Lois, where she's unlikable because of it.
Yeah. I'm also surprised that she's probably one of your alternates, and I just completely forgot her name. I didn't include her on my list because I didn't feel like there was enough mom moments that I saw of her.
Yeah.
But the mom from Boy Meets World, what's her name? I know you know
Amy.
it. Amy, that's
Yeah.
right. She was another one that is like one of those relatable type moms. You just, as
Hmm.
you're watching her, like she's a solid mom. You had a great appreciation for her,
Hmm.
but she was more relegated to the background because it really was a lot more about
Yeah.
Corey and Topanga and Sean.
There was one good episode where it turns out that she went back to take like a college course in writing just kind of for fun, and she ended up being in the same class as Eric. And then her class that she wrote, I mean, it's interesting she did this knowing that her son was in the class, basically wrote about her and her husband's sex life when they were both starting out. And of course Eric's like and then the episode was kind of about him realizing, oh, my mom's a real person outside of being a mom, and she has her own interests. And then, of course, at the end, she writes another super personal story about Eric being born. And then it's the reverse for everyone else in the class is like, and Eric's like, this is awesome. This is about me.
I like the one episode when they were like Eric realized he had a lot of similar interests as them, and it freaked him out at first.
Oh, yeah.
Like he went to an Aerosmith concert, and his parents
Mm-hmm.
also went to that same Aerosmith concert,
Mm-hmm.
and they were the ones like front row in the mosh pit, like really going crazy. I don't know if Aerosmith has a mosh pit, but they're the ones that like really getting into it. He's like, they kind of ruined Aerosmith for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I felt so embarrassed to be there with my parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's a good mom. So I forget where we left off. Do you still have your number one?
I still have my number one, and
All
this
right.
is it's on a show that's not quite finished. So it could end in a different direction, but so far they've given a really good character to the character of Rebecca Pearson from This Is Us.
Okay,
I
I
think
agree with that one.
I think she's a tremendous mom. You get to see a lot of what she goes through in this show. And one of the benefits of a show like This Is Us and how they film it is you see all across her life. You see her early relationship with Jack. You see when they're engaged. You see when they're married. You see when they're first early parents. You see when she's a single mom once Jack dies. You see her in the present day and how she handles her kids now that they're adults. And she is a great character because you see very obvious flaws, and like especially how she handled Kate and how she related to Kate, but her flaw was relatable. Like the way she handled Kate, you look at her and you say, well, she did the best that she could, and you don't really feel like she was at any point, because Kate has weight issues and really struggles with self worth because of those weight issues. And you see how Mandy Moore's character interacted with her, and it's really that like Rebecca was a really, she's thin and she is very talented in singing, and so like she is the sort of woman that Kate looked up to early on, but then started to get this self-worth image and like, I can't live up to that. And so then the things that Rebecca would say to her would be like daggers with that, but they weren't like even mean spirited. They were nice, and they were Rebecca trying to reach out, but because she was quote unquote so perfect, it just came off the wrong way. And so that's what's great about her character, is that you really you're rooting for her completely. And sure, she has flaws, but they're not that bad. She's a really great character.
Yeah.
So
it's easy to root for an underdog. In a lot of ways, she's an underdog because this family, with the storyline that Jack died a long time ago, everyone in this family like idolizes Jack. Everyone talks about, oh, Jack's so great. And yeah, Jack did his best. He was a great dad, but he had his flaws too. And I feel like sometimes his flaws are overlooked, as in he's so perfect. And maybe it's just because they're looking back with the grief of him being gone, but it seems like they don't really give Rebecca that same amount of stuff, even though they were right there together with parenting. And they even had a recent episode, I don't know if you're caught up, where I think Kate calls Rebecca and says like, hey, I'm just realizing like Dad didn't make a lot of money, and yet we never noticed. Like you always managed to do this for us and have cool birthday parties and do that. And Rebecca was just like, yeah, we just, we made it work. And it's just kind of a cool moment that they finally recognized her after like idolizing Jack the whole time.
Yeah, I think it was either last season or the season before that the arc really started to favor Rebecca a lot more, of showing like what a superhero and what a rock star she was once Jack died, and how she was able to handle these things.
Yeah.
And that, they might have appreciated her, but their appreciation really deepened. And I don't remember which season that was, but there was an arc that kind of ended with showing that. And there's this episode in season 1 that I really liked too, and it had to do with Randall, because there's a big flaw she had in season 1, because we find out she met Randall's real dad a long time ago when he was shortly after he was born. And just because of the fear of what could happen to Randall going with William, because William was a former drug addict. And so like you can understand why she'd be apprehensive. And so there's actually this episode where Randall kind of has this hallucination at the cabin, and Jack is talking to him in this hallucination. Is like, you need to look and see what your mom was doing and how she thought it was the best for you. And kind of in that hallucination, she's like standing at the door of this cabin trying to keep out this evil coming into the cabin. And it's like, that was supposed to symbolize like the protection that she felt that she had to do for Randall. And sure, it was ended up probably being the wrong choice, but that was what she thought was the best thing. And that was her job, is to take care of Randall. And so that was the thing that helped him forgive her and kind of reconcile with her once that happened.
Yeah, and that's relatable. I'm sure you can relate to. A lot of times your kids don't realize how you rethink, like, oh, was that the right move? Should I have done that? And like, you rethink yourself a lot.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why, you guys, call your mom. Yeah. She tries really freaking hard. Okay.
Yeah. So one more thing about Rebecca, you mentioned how they showed that she really stepped up, or like, was able to hold the family together after Jack died. One moment that showed that was the arc, I think it was last season, where we find out that in the past, Kate had dated this completely manipulative jerk. And at one point they find out that he had locked her out of the cabin in the freezing cold all night. and Randall and Kevin, as teenagers, were about to step up because in that moment, like if Jack had been alive, he would have like kicked this guy's butt, and they were all ready to like, all right, let's do this. And she was just like, no, I got this. And she looks at him and is like, you get the hell out of my house. And it's just she didn't need to be protected in that moment. She was the one in charge and did that.
Yeah. And I mean, that's also probably the right move for her sons too, to stop them from making the situation worse, and him calling the cops on them and all the like kind of getting arrested for assault or whatever.
Yeah.
Like we probably don't need that, but you will never see her again.
Yeah. And this also, the show also connects with your number 2 pick, Claire Huxtable. Phylicia Rashad has now been on This Is Us as Beth's mom. And that's a really cool character too.
Yeah, and she, Phylicia Rashad, she really has this way about her that is just so like prim and proper and refined and elegant, and it's just like, this is not a silly type of woman. Like she walks in the room and she owns the room. She's that sort of actress.
Mm-hmm. I think the only other one that I was going to mention in passing is Reba from Reba.
I've seen a couple episodes. I never watched that religiously, but it was funnier than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I watched it a little bit when it aired, and actually another one, like almost the whole series has been sitting in my DVR, because like whenever I find one of those old shows, I just set it to record all, and I figure one of these days I'll get around to watching them. So like that and Home Improvement are just sitting in my DVR for me to watch little bits at a time.
Nice.
But it's just the whole system. Like her husband cheats on her and gets his wife pregnant, and then they move out across the street, and so she's co-parenting like teenage kids with her husband, with his new wife living across the street. And how she deals with that is just cool. And her humor is just really good too.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not good moms, but they're admirable characters from the show Moms. Oh. And so both of those like mainly Anna Faris's character, it's like you're really able to root for, but you can't really call her a good mom because she's made so many mistakes and she knows she's not a good mom. But at the time that we catch up with her, she's trying, and that's all that you can hope for.
Yeah. And it's always interesting if you make a character a mom. I feel like you have to shift the dynamic of the show at least a little bit to make it about that, which I think was a flaw in Friends, because I mean Ross had a son throughout the whole series, but it seemed like he only had a son when it was convenient. And even when Emma was born, there were a lot of storylines about Emma, but it seems like, again, they could just mention in passing, oh, Emma's with so-and-so, and then we're just going to get back to being all about single people again.
Yep. How I Met Your Mother did the same thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shows where it's like, hey, look, we had a baby. The Office, they have babies, and it's like, oh, and then they're gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think as cheesy as it is to have someone have a baby in like a finale, it's kind of an easier way to do that, because then you can just, your life changes when you become a parent, and you can just headcanon it, be like, oh yeah, then they went on to be a good parent. They don't have to try to be a parent on the show if you're not going to make the kids actual characters. Like
apparently not.
Like on Big Bang Theory, one of the couples of Howard and Burnett had a kid, and I don't think they ever actually showed the kid on screen. They only ever showed the kid crying from off screen. That way they didn't have to deal with any baby actors.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's another reason why they're like, when we have a kid, we will keep it off screen, because we don't need to deal with that.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think those are all the moms that I wanted to mention.
Yep, same here. We talked about a lot more than just 3 each, but it's worth it. There's some really good moms, even though there are so many times that they don't do moms a good service. There are a lot on TV. So.
And okay, on the note, I know you say that you got a lot of stuff to watch. You should watch enough of Modern Family, because you give me total Phil Dunphy vibes from that show.
Ty Burrell.
Yeah. You like especially his character is how I imagine you as a dad.
I've seen clips, and you're probably right.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, hey, what was last week's trivia question?
Oh, last week I had 2 of them because I cheat like that. One of them was about a famous actress who was originally in the Power Rangers movie. And that was Mariska Hargitay, who has been Olivia Benson on Law & Order SVU. You can look up pictures of her in like a a Xena style bikini with the Power Rangers from 1995.
That's a weird thing for you to give them permission to look up. You can find pictures of her in a bikini online. Feel free.
Well, it's just weird because looking back, they put that into like a kids show. But just look up Mariska Hargitay Power Rangers, and you can see the picture. The other one was about Simba from The Lion King, because we talked about how Jonathan Taylor Thomas from Home Improvement was the voice. His singing voice was Jason Weaver, who played the older brother on Smart Guy.
Nice. It took me a while to figure out that the voice of Max in Goofy movie was from Boy Meets World, Eric's friend, like from early in the seasons. Yep. What was his name?
His name was Jason Marsden, just like his character's name.
Jason Marsden. That's right.
And he was also on Full House, and he was a regular on Step by Step.
Yeah, he's just one of those like classic TV guys from the 90s where it's like you're going to pop up on all these different shows and you're like, hey, I know him.
Yeah, and he's one too. For in Fuller House, they brought his character back, but he didn't want to come back, so they just brought back a different actor. It's like, but he wasn't even a big character. You didn't even have to bring him back. Like, if he says no, just move on to somebody else, is what I say.
That's like doing an Office reboot and recasting Mose. Like, no one needs Mose.
Yeah. But I bet if they did, they could get Mike Schur to do one scene as Mose.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, Mike Schur is. I'm sure. Ha. All right. What is this week's trivia question, Brian?
This is a mom-related trivia question. There is a real-life mother and daughter who have played the same character in different shows at different points in her life. There may actually be more than one answer to this, but there's one I'm thinking of. So the mother and the daughter in real life have both played the same character at different points in the character's life.
Okay. And it was on the same show, or they've done that in multiple shows where they had them do that?
It's two shows that are related within the same universe. There's two different shows that have this character. And it was the mom first, and then the second show is like a prequel show. And so they actually got her daughter to play her character younger. So it really looks like, like she could grow into being the adult version.
This sounds familiar. This is not anything to do with TV. When they did the show or the movie Straight Outta Compton, they got Ice Cube's son to play Ice Cube in the movie, and he did such a good job. Because he looks so much like his dad, you're watching and you're like, this looks like young Ice Cube. Like, that's just it. It's him.
Yeah. That's always cool when you can do that if they're both actors.
Yeah. Yeah. And he did acting really well in that movie. So.
All right. Well, if you have answers to these, or if you want to let us know, or just talk to us in general, TV Guys 1 on Facebook. Nope. Just TV Guys on Facebook. TV Guys 1 on Twitter.
There you go.
TV Guys Podcast and gmail.com.
Or text us. We love that. Pretty soon we're going to be so big, such a huge podcast. People are going to be like, how do I text these rock stars? We'll be like, you can't. Go find us on Facebook.
So I tried out, there's this new TikTok filter where you put up a picture and it starts with you, and it's like supposed to morph you into like whatever character or whatever face in the picture you look most like. Mm-hmm. So I did that with our TV Guys logo, and they morphed me into you twice, even though that's my face is on there. It's the same face. Nope. I'm Matt.
You are. Yep.
I should do that again and save it and see if we can post that.
Just so you guys know, I have a dominant face. You're welcome. That's a weird sentence. Again, every single time we do a podcast, it's always like, how do we end these things? Because they go off the rails. But we are glad you stuck with us. We are glad. If you're a mom, way to go. You don't get nearly enough recognition. Nope. I don't care how much you are recognized by the people around you. It's still not enough. You do a lot. So way to go.
Thank you to Anna and Angie.
Exactly. Yep. Until next week, let me just tell you what we're talking about. Next week, we are going to talk about our most realistic TV shows. So shows that take place in reality that they are really unrealistic, but that's how things are going to go. Yeah. I think I promoted this last week, and then we realized we're actually going to talk about Mother's Day. So
no, I think we promoted both last week, so you're good.
Oh, we did. Okay. Well, just a reminder. That's what we're doing. So the long-awaited episode comes next week. Get ready for it. Until next time, I'm Matt,
I'm Brian.
and we're telling you to go call your mom. Stay tuned and keep watching.
Oh, you know how I kept putting myself in the background?
Uh-huh.
But now I have a different background person. Charlie, I wanted to say hi.
There it is. How's it going, Charlie?
Good.
Good. I've got Mountain Dew, but you can't have any because you're too far away.
I don't think I could possibly take that from here.
You can
Well,
try.
Well, by the
I mean,
time you brought it, it'd probably go flat.
I don't know. I've got extra pep in my Mountain Dew.